A man is trying to sell his dog to a neighbor. "You can have this dog for only $5, and he can actually," says the man. His neighbor says, "That's ridiculous. Everyone knows dogs can't speak." The dog looks up at the neighbor with big, sad, doggy eyes and says, "Oh, please, kind sir, buy me so I won't have to live with my cruel master. He won't feed me or bathe me, and he never takes me out for walks. I was once the richest dog in the whole world. I've played several roles in award-winning movies. I've spoken to kings, queens, and presidents. I fought in the war and got several medals. I even got to travel to the moon." "Hey, he can talk," says the neighbor in amazement. "But why are you offering him for just $5? "Oh," he asked the owner. "Because," snarls the man, "I'm sick of him always lying." A man walks into a bar and asks the bartender, "If I show you a really good trick, will you give me a free drink?" The bartender considers it, then agrees. The man reaches into his pocket and pulls out a tiny rat. He reaches into his other pocket and pulls out a tiny piano. The rat stretches, cracks his knuckles, and proceeds to play the blues. The bartender pours the man a drink on the house, and he puts the rat and piano away. After the man finished his drink, he asked the bartender, "If I show you an even better trick, will you give me free drinks for the rest of the evening?" The bartender agrees, thinking that no trick could possibly be better than the first. The man reaches into his pockets again and pulls out the tiny rat and tiny piano. The rat stretches, cracks his knuckles, and proceeds to play the blues. The man reaches into a third pocket and pulls out a small bullfrog, who begins to sing along with the rat's music. While the man is enjoying his beverages, a stranger confronts him and offers him $10,000 for the bullfrog. "Sorry," the man replies, "he's not for sale." The stranger increases the offer to $25,000 cash up front. "No," he insists, "he's not for sale." The stranger again increases the offer, this time to $50,000 cash. The man finally agrees and turns the frog over to the stranger in exchange for the money. "Are you insane?" the bartender demanded. "That frog could have been worth millions to you, and you let him go for a mere $50,000? "Don't worry about it," the man answered. "The frog was nothing special. You see, the rat's a ventriloquist." A woman goes to the doctor's to have a strange mark on her tummy looked at. The doctor said, "Do you by any chance have a boyfriend who attends Wisconsin University?" Confused, the girl asks, "Why do you ask?" The doc chuckles. "I'm not just a doctor. I'm also an amateur detective. It looks like your lover likes to wear a sweater with the initial letter of their university emblazoned on the front. Its mildly abrasive quality has been rubbing on your skin." "Not bad, Doc," she says. "Not bad at all." "Well," says the doctor, "am I right then? Do you have a boyfriend from Wisconsin?" She smiles and explains, "Nope, but I've got a girlfriend from Michigan." "My grandfather died and I inherited some of his clothes. He was a farmer and he loved getting dressed up every year for the local fair and exhibiting his prize chickens. For this occasion, my grandmother would spend the entire year searching through thrift shops looking for silly neckties for him to wear, and she loved finding ones with chickens on them. After a few decades of this, my grandfather had amassed several dozen neckties, each one with cartoonish images of chickens flying around, laying eggs and doing other chicken things. I always complimented him on the newest addition to his collection. When he died a couple of years ago, he bequeathed them to me in his will. When my grandmother handed me the bag full of them, my eyes welled with tears, and I smiled thinking about my grandfather looking in the mirror and straightening his tie. Why am I telling you all of this backstory? Because the last time I tried to tell this to someone and I didn't give context, they thought it was weird that I was so excited about inheriting my dead grandfather's necktie collection. 4 older men are walking down a street. They turn a corner and see a sign that says, "Old Timers Bar, all drinks 10 cents. They look at each other and then go in, thinking, this is too good to be true. The old bartender says in a voice that carries across the room, "Come on in and let me pour one for you. What'll it be, gentlemen?" There's a fully stocked bar, so each of the men orders a martini. In no time, the bartender serves up 4 iced martinis shaken, not stirred, and says, "That's 10 cents each, please." The 4 guys stare at the bartender for a moment, then at each other. They can't believe their good luck. They pay the 40 cents, finish their martinis, and order another round. Again, 4 excellent martinis are produced, with the bartender again saying, "That's 40 cents, please." They pay 40 cents, but their curiosity gets the better of them. They've each had 2 martinis and haven't even spent $1 yet. Finally, one of them says, "How can you afford to serve martinis as good as these for a dime apiece?" "I'm a retired tailor from Phoenix," the bartender says, "and I always wanted to own a bar. Last year, I hit the lottery jackpot for $125 million and decided to open this place. Every drink costs a dime. Wine, liquor, beer, it's all the same." "Wow, that's some story," one of the men says. As the 4 of them sip their martinis, they can't help noticing 7 other people at the end of the bar who don't have any drinks in front of them and haven't ordered anything the whole time they've been there. Nodding at the 7 at the end of the bar, one of the men asks the bartender, "What's with them?" The bartender says, "They're retired people from Florida. They're waiting for happy hour when drinks are half price." A family of 5 is going on vacation. They've rented an RV for the cross-country trip. They loaded the RV with household items, clothing, recreational gear, pets, and food. Off they go. The car crashes into a brick wall minutes after starting the journey. Everyone is killed except the pet monkey. Police investigate but can't find a reason for the crash. They bring the monkey in for questioning. Police: "What was the mother doing before the crash?" Monkey pantomimes applying lipstick using the rearview mirror. Police: "She had the mirror turned. That might have caused the crash." Police: "What were the kids doing before the crash?" Monkey pantomimes kids fighting. Police: "The kids caused a distraction. This might have caused the crash." Police: "What was the dad doing before the crash?" Monkey pantomimes drinking out of a bottle. Police: "The father was drinking. This might have caused the crash." Police: "What were you doing before the crash?" Monkey pantomimes holding a steering wheel and driving. A teacher trying to teach good manners asked her students the following question. "Michael, if you were on a date having dinner with a nice young lady, how would you tell her that you have to go to the bathroom?" Michael said, "Just a minute. I have to go pee." The teacher responded by saying, "That would be rude and impolite. What about you, Sherman? How would you say it?" Sherman said, "I'm sorry, but I really need to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back." That's better, but it's still not very nice to say the word bathroom at the dinner table. And you, little Johnny, can you use your brain for once and show us your good manners? Johnny said, "I would say, darling, may I please be excused for a moment? I have to shake hands with a very dear friend of mine, who I hope to introduce you to after dinner." Bob returned from a doctor's visit and told his wife, Alma, that the doctor said he only had 24 hours to live. Wiping away her tears, he asked her to make love with him. Of course she agreed, and they made passionate love. 6 hours later, Bob went to her again and said, "Honey, now I only have 18 hours left to live. Maybe we could make love again?" Alma agreed, and again they made love. Later, Bob was getting into bed when he realized he now had only 8 hours of life left. He touched Alma's shoulder and said, "Honey, please, just one more time before I die." She agreed, and afterwards she rolled over and fell asleep. Bob, however, heard the clock ticking in his head, and he tossed and turned until he was down to only 4 more hours. He tapped his wife on the shoulder to wake her up. "Honey, I only have 4 hours left. Could we?" His wife sat up abruptly, turned to him, and said, "Listen, Bob, I have to get up in the morning for your funeral, and you don't have to get up." A doctor, a priest, and an engineer go golfing. After only a few rounds, they get caught behind the worst group of golfers they've ever seen. After growing impatient from waiting for them to finish their holes, they go into the clubhouse to complain. "Let me explain," says the manager. "You see, those men all used to be firefighters, some of the best our city has ever seen. There was a fire here at the clubhouse about 5 years ago. Those heroic men saved our clubhouse from the fire. However, most unfortunately, they all lost their sight in the terrible fire. Since then, they are welcome to use our facilities for life. It's the very least we could do." The priest looks forlorn and says, "I'm so sorry to hear it. I will hold a prayer service this Sunday dedicated to these men." The doctor says, What an awful thing! I know a highly regarded optometrist who has done some research that might be able to help them. I'll arrange for them to meet as soon as I can." The engineer thinks for a moment and says, "Why can't they golf at night?" Mother Superior wakes up and gets out of bed one morning in the convent. She begins her usual walk down a long hallway with rooms for the other nuns lining either side. Immediately, one of the nuns looks at Mother Superior and says, "It looks like someone got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning." Mother Superior is a little taken aback by this comment, but shrugs it off and continues. Remarkably, as she passes the very next room, another nun says, "Looks like someone got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning." And on down the hallway, this continues until she finally reaches her destination, meeting with one of the priests coming to visit for the day. The priest begins to open his mouth to greet her when she stops him, and quite exasperatedly, she exclaims, "Don't you dare say! It looks like someone got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning." The priest says, "I wasn't going to say that. I was just going to ask why you're wearing the bishop's slippers." A mother is invited by her son, Dave, for dinner. He lives with a female roommate, Tina. During the course of the meal, his mother couldn't help but notice how pretty Tina is. Over the course of the evening, while watching the two interact, she started to wonder if there was more between Dave and his roommate than met the eye. Reading his mom's thoughts, Dave volunteered, "I know what you must be thinking, but I assure you, Tina and I are just roommates." About a week later, Tina came to Dave, saying, "Ever since your mother came to dinner, I've been unable to find the silver sugar bowl. You don't suppose she took it, do you?" "Well, I doubt it, but I'll email her just to be sure," said Dave. So he sat down and wrote an email. "Dear Mum, I'm not saying that you did take the sugar bowl from my house. I'm not saying that you did not take it. But the fact remains that it has been missing ever since you were here for dinner. Love, Dave." Several days later, Dave received a response email from his mother which read, "Dear son, I'm not saying that you do sleep with Tina, and I'm not saying that you do not sleep with her, but the fact remains that if she was sleeping in her own bed, she would have found the sugar bowl by now." A man named Rick walks into his room after a long day of work and sees his wife crying on their bed. He asks her what it was all about, and she says that she had been threatened by someone she thought was her friend earlier that evening. Now Rick has no idea how to handle this, so he goes to confront his friend Lee, who has some experience with things like this. After a long discussion, Lee concludes and says, "Dude, you just need to be there for her. Comfort her and just be her anchor until she can get back on solid ground." From this, a flurry of questions came to Rick. So Rick asked Lee, "How do I tell her I'm never going to give her up? How do I tell her I'm never going to let her down? How do I tell her I'm never going to turn around and desert her? How do I tell her I'm not going to let her cry and I'm never going to say goodbye? How do I say I'm never going to lie and hurt her?" A man is at the checkout line of a supermarket when he realizes he forgot to buy condoms. When his turn arrives, he looks at the cashier and asks, "I'm sorry. I forgot to buy condoms. Can you ask someone to bring me a packet?" "That's fine," she tells him. "What size do you need?" He's not sure, so the pharmacist asks him to drop his pants, has a little feel around that area, and then speaks into the microphone, "Packet of medium condoms to cashier 4, please." The person behind him is a jock, and whilst he doesn't need condoms, he's curious as to how he shapes up. So when it's his turn, he says the same thing. "I'm sorry, I forgot to buy condoms. Can you ask someone to bring me a packet?" Just as before, she asks him to drop his pants, has a feel around, then speaks into the microphone. "Packet of extra-large condoms to cashier 4, please." The next person in the queue is the ugliest person you can imagine, and he's quite interested in the whole thing. When he arrives, he goes, "I also forgot to buy condoms. I don't know my size," and pulls his pants down. The cashier has a little feel around that area, then speaks into the microphone, "Mop and bucket to cashier 4, please." One day, a young couple snuck into a field to have some private time. Just as they were getting into it, a little boy happened to pass by and caught them in the act. The couple panicked, and the boy grinned and said, "I won't tell anyone if you let me try too." The girl hesitated but eventually agreed. The boy excitedly stepped forward, but after several awkward attempts, nothing happened. He kept trying and trying, but nothing. Frustrated, he finally threw his hands up and said, "You know what? I'm telling everyone. Bad things deserve punishment." There was a man who had worked all his life, had saved all of his money, and was a real miser when it came to spending his money. Just before he died, he said to his wife, "When I die, I want you to take all my money and put it in the casket with me." And so he got his wife to promise him with all of her heart that when he died, she would put all of the money into the casket with him. Well, he died. He was stretched out in the casket. His wife was sitting there dressed in black, and her friend was sitting next to her. When they finished the ceremony, and just before the undertakers got ready to close the casket, wife said, "Wait just a moment." She had a small metal box with her. She came over with the box and put it in the casket. Then the undertakers locked it and took the casket down and carried it away. So her friend said, "Girl, I know you are not foolish enough to put all the money in there with your husband." The loyal wife replied, "Listen, I am a Christian. I cannot go back on my word. I promised him that I would put that money into the casket with him." "You mean to tell me you put that money in the casket with him?" "I sure did," said the wife. "I got it all together, put it into my account, and wrote him a check. If he can cash it, then he can spend it." 3 construction workers have lunch together on top of a tall building. The first one opens his lunchbox and goes, "Another tuna sandwich. I eat a tuna sandwich every day. If I have to eat another tuna sandwich, I am going to jump." The second one opens his lunchbox and also goes, "Man, another turkey club sandwich. I can't stand it anymore. If it's the same tomorrow, I'll jump." The third worker opens his lunchbox, sees a meatball sandwich, and, like the others, says he'll jump if he has to eat another meatball sandwich. The next day, the 3 men open their lunchboxes. The first one got a tuna sandwich. He writes a goodbye note and jumps. The second got a turkey club and does the same. The third sees he has a meatball sandwich and follows them. At the funeral, the wives of the 3 men meet. The first one weeps and says, "If only I had known, I would have made him something else." The second wife is angry and goes, "He never told me he wanted something else. If he had just talked to me." They notice that the third wife just looks sort of confused, so they ask her what's wrong. She replies, "I just don't get it. He always made his own lunch." A psychologist has a party for all of her patients. She instructs everyone to come dressed as an emotion. As the party begins, she sees her first patient come in dressed in all red. The psychologist asks her, "What are you dressed as?" And the patient replies, "I'm dressed as anger and rage." The next patient comes in and is dressed in all blue. The psychologist asks what he is dressed as, and he tells her, "I'm dressed as sorrow." Next patient comes in dressed in yellow. The psychologist says, "What are you dressed as?" She responds, "I'm dressed as happiness and delight." Then she sees her black patient Leroy come into the party, completely naked with a pear on the end of his dick. The psychologist goes up to him and says, "Leroy, you are at my party completely naked with a pear on your penis. What on earth are you doing?" And Leroy says, "What do you mean, what am I doing? You told me to come to this party dressed as an emotion, and I am." The psychologist, in disbelief, says, "What emotion could you possibly be?" He tells her, "I'm deeply in despair." A man is lying in the hospital waiting to be the first person in history to receive a brain transplant. A doctor comes in and says, "Congratulations! But unfortunately, since this is a new procedure, your insurance isn't going to cover it all. So we're going to give you 3 choices for brains, and you can decide which you can afford." The man says to the doctor, "Okay, what are they?" The doctor says, "Well, first, there's engineer brain. That's $100 an ounce. Then there's astrophysicist brain, which will cost you $200 an ounce. Finally, there's politician brain. That's the most expensive at $1,000 an ounce." The man looks at the doctor, surprised. "That's absurd. Why is the politician brain so expensive?" The doctor turns to him and says, "Sir, do you have any idea how many politicians it takes to get an ounce of brain?" An elderly woman was very ill and in the hospital. Her daughter was constantly by her bedside, but when she had to go to work, she called her husband and made him promise he would visit his mother-in-law while she was away. When she came home after work, she asked her husband, very worried, "So how's my mom doing?" "She's great," he replied. "She will be released from the hospital any day now and will move in with us when she's released and go on to live for many, many years." "Wow, that's amazing," says the wife, "but also very strange. Before I left the hospital, she seemed very ill, and the doctor said she may only have a few days left. Did she have some kind of a miraculous recovery?" "Well, I don't know about that," replied the husband. "But today the doctor told me that we needed to start preparing for the worst." Two old men decide they are close to their last days and decide to have a last night on the town. After a few drinks, they end up at the local brothel. The madame takes one look at the two old geezers and whispers to her manager, "Go up to the first two bedrooms and put an inflated doll in each bed. These two are so old and drunk. I'm not wasting two of my girls on them. They won't know the difference." The manager does as he is told, and the two old men go upstairs and take care of their business. As they are walking home, the first man says, "You know, I think my girl was dead." "Dead," says his friend. "Why do you say that?" "Well, she never moved or made a sound all the time I was loving her." His friend says, "Could be worse. I think mine was a witch." "A witch? Why the hell would you say that?" "Well, I was making love to her, kissing her on the neck, and I gave her a little bite. Then she farted and flew out the window. Took my teeth with her." A young widow goes to the funeral parlor to plan her husband's funeral. She met with the mortician, who asked her how she wants the body dressed. "He always looks so good in blue. I want him to be buried in a blue suit." This posed a problem, as he had been delivered to the funeral parlor in the black suit he was wearing when he died. However, the wife was adamant. "I don't care what it costs," she said, handing the mortician a blank check. "Do whatever it takes." The mortician agrees, and the next day calls the widow back. When she arrived, the mortician revealed her husband in a very sharp blue suit. The wife is very pleased. "Thank you so much. This is perfect. Whatever it cost, it was worth it." The mortician handed her back the blank check. "There is no charge, madam," he said. "I don't understand," the widow said. "How did you manage this for free?" "Well, shortly after you left yesterday, another gentleman was delivered. He was similar in size and build to your husband, and he was wearing a blue suit. I asked his next of kin if they would object to him being buried in a black suit instead of the blue one, and they said they didn't care." "So you undressed them and swapped the suits?" the widow said. "That must have been difficult." "Oh, no," said the mortician. "I just swapped the heads." So a guy walks into a brothel. He only has $10 in his wallet, but he's truly desperate. So he asks the madam what he can get for it. She says, "Nothing. Try your luck in the streets or come back with some money." He says, "Please, I'm so desperate. Isn't there anything you can do for me?" Reluctantly, she says, "Well, we have a chicken. I suppose for $10, you can do what you can with that." The guy's unsure, but he hands it over and goes for it. Surprisingly, the chicken feels pretty good. He gets off and goes home. Next week, he goes back to the brothel with $10 and says, "Hey, can I see that chicken again?" The madam says, "I'm sorry, sir, the chicken passed away, but we do have a show tonight. Admission is just $10. He agrees and squeezes into the auditorium. Two beautiful women are licking each other all over. He nudges the guy next to him and says, "Hey, this is pretty good." The other guy says, "You should have been here last week. They had a guy fucking a chicken." A woman awakes during the night to find that her husband is not in bed. She puts on her robe and goes downstairs to look for him. She finds him sitting at the kitchen table with a hot cup of coffee in front of him. He appears to be in deep thought, just staring at the wall. She watches as he wipes a tear from his eye and takes a sip of his coffee. "What's the matter, dear?" she whispers as she steps into the room. "Why are you down here at this time of night?" The husband looks up from his coffee. "It's the 20th anniversary of the day we met." She can't believe he has remembered and starts to tear up. The husband continues, "Do you remember 20 years ago when we started dating? I was 18 and you were only 16, he says solemnly. Once again, the wife is touched to tears. "Yes, I do," she replies. The husband pauses. The words were not coming easily. "Do you remember when your father caught us in the back seat of my car? "Yes, I remember," said the wife, lowering herself into the chair beside him. The husband continued, "Do you remember when he shoved the shotgun in my face and said, 'Either you marry my daughter or I will send you to prison for 20 years'? "I remember that, too," she replied softly. He wiped another tear from his cheek and said, "I would have gotten out today." One day, a state trooper, while patrolling the road, spied a vehicle on a country road going 22 miles an hour. It looked quite suspicious to him, so he pulled the driver over. When the state trooper was approaching the car, he noticed that the passengers inside looked wide-eyed and really pale. As he stood next to the car, the elderly driver started talking. "Officer, I don't understand why you pulled me over. I was doing exactly the speed limit. I don't understand what the problem seems to be." "Sir," the officer replied, "indeed, you weren't speeding, but driving much slower than the speed limit can also be very dangerous." "I'm sorry, officer, but I beg to differ. I was doing exactly the speed limit as stated on the sign, 22 miles an hour, the old man said. The trooper was a bit surprised. He then explained that the 22 on the sign was the route number and not the speed limit. A bit embarrassed, the old man grinned a bit and thanked the state trooper for pointing out his mistake. Before the state trooper was about to let the old man go, he said, "But before I let you go, sir, I really have to ask whether everyone in this car is feeling all right, because your passengers seem awfully pale and shaken." "Oh, they'll be all right in a minute," the old man said. "We just got off Route 119. Once upon a time, there was a monk who farmed carrots. Every day, a thief would sneak into his farm and steal 3 carrots. The monk always tried to stop him, but never succeeded. He began to wonder why the thief was stealing exactly 3 carrots each time. He decided he was going to stop the thief. He started chasing him through the fields, but got outran very quickly. "I can't run that fast," the monk thought. He started training. He trained for days, weeks, months, until he became the fastest monk in the whole world. He then returned to his farm. As always, the thief appeared and took 3 carrots. The monk started chasing him through the fields until they reached a fence. The thief jumped over it, but the monk stopped. "I can't jump that high," he thought. He trained for days, weeks, months, until he became the highest jumping monk. He returns to the farm. The thief steals 3 carrots. He chases the thief through the fields. They both jump the fence, and they arrive at a lake. The thief jumps into it and swims away. "I can't swim," the monk thought. He trained for days, weeks, months, until he became the best swimmer among all monks. He returns to the farm. The thief steals 3 carrots. He chases the thief through the fields. They both jump the fence, swim across the lake. They reach a mountain, and the thief climbs it. "I can't climb," the monk thought. He started training climbing for days, weeks, months, until he became the best monk mountaineer in the world. He returns to his farm. The thief steals 3 carrots. The monk chases him. They both jump the fence, swim across the lake, climb the mountain. When they both arrived at the mountaintop, the monk blocks the thief's way. Suddenly, he punches the monk in the stomach. "I can't fight," the monk thought. He started training for days, weeks, months, until he became the best boxer of all monks. He returns to his farm. The thief steals 3 carrots. The monk chases him. They both jump the fence, swim across the lake, climb the mountain. When they both arrive at the mountaintop, the monk blocks the thief's way and knocks him down with 1 punch. "Why are you only stealing 3 carrots at a time?" he asked the thief. "I will tell you, but promise to never tell anybody." And the monk kept his promise. A burglar breaks into a home and holds the husband and wife in it hostage. At gunpoint, he forces the 2 to sit on chairs facing the opposite way back to each other and ties them to the chairs. The burglar slowly and methodically begins stealing from the house. When the burglar has taken everything of value, he gets ready to leave, the homeowners still bound to their chairs, when suddenly the man yells at the burglar, "Please untie her, please let her go." The thief responds with, "No, I'm not untying either of you so that the authorities get notified as late as possible. Don't worry, your neighbors will soon wonder why your lights are still on throughout the night and check in on you long before you succumb to dehydration." The man yet again pleads, "Please just untie her. I'll do anything." The burglar once again explains his reasoning. "I need to get away with this crime. I'm sorry. I can't leave anything up to chance." The man shuffles his chair towards the burglar, in a state of mania, exclaims, "I'm begging you, man, just let her go. She won't call the cops. I promise." The burglar, still unwilling to budge, did find it quite touching how much his hostage cared about his wife. "Wow," he said. "You must really love your wife to beg me to untie her so desperately." "No," the man replied in a state of frenzy. "My wife will be home in 15 minutes.